From the headquarters of TeleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm Gladys Quesada. On Sunday, 3 people were murdered in the municipality of Jamundi, located in the Valle del Cauca department in southwestern Colombia, according to the Institute for Development and Peace Studies in the past. According to local media, authorities confirmed that the 3 people were found dead on Sunday afternoon in a rural area of the Jamundi department. The victims are 2 men and a woman identified as Ramiro Delgado, Melba Carreño, and Jose Mestizo. This fatal event occurred 24 hours after the massacre that took place on Saturday in the municipality of Cartago, located in Valle del Cauca, where hired killers murdered 4 people, 2 men and 2 women. In the past, also denounced that unknown men killed this Sunday the indigenous community member Ramiro Ascueyule, who was killed in massacre. The president of Venezuela, Nicolás Maduro Moros, rejected the terrorist actions committed by criminal groups from Colombia, which occurred last March 23rd. President Maduro said that irregular criminal gangs from Colombia attacked the headquarters of public institutions in that state and that these actions violated the physical integrity of civilians. The president also denounced that these irregular armed groups fled to Colombia and are protected by the government of Iván Duque after committing their terrorist actions against the sovereignty of Venezuela. Likewise, the Venezuelan head of state denounced that from the House of Nariño, they intend to generate a direct confrontation between the armed forces of both nations. Also in Venezuela, President Nicolás Maduro Moros announced that they will offer oil in exchange for vaccines as an alternative to acquire the shots against COVID-19.
And the second way, what I proved today, is to dedicate the oil for vaccines. Venezuela has the oil tankers, has the customer to buy us the oil, and will dedicate a part of its production to guarantee all the vaccines that Venezuela needs. Oil for vaccines. We are ready and ready, because we are not going to beg anyone. Venezuela don't kneel to anyone in this war. We have dignity and resource.
Hundreds of Cubans have formed a caravan in Havana, joining similar ones around the world, to demand that the U.S. change its policies and lift a blockade against the island. Hundreds of Cubans took Havana's famous Seaside Drive on Sunday in a colorful caravan of cars, motorcycles and bicycles to demand the United States to lift its 60-year-old embargo on the Caribbean island nation. The caravan was part of a weekend of protests in more than 50 cities in Europe, Africa, Latin America and the United States. Figures provided to the United Nations by the Cuban government estimated that the annual losses due to the Washington sanctions between 2019 and 2020 alone reached $5.5 billion. Former U.S. President Donald Trump radically toughened measures, while Joe Biden said during his election campaign that he will review this policy.
The blockade, the U.S. embargo of Cuba, kills, and the blockade during the COVID-19 pandemic is not only a crime, illegal, immoral, extraterritorial, and gross violation of international law. It reinforces its genocidal character. We are all here in more than 50 cities around the world to say no more blockade.
Paraguay has imposed new tougher restrictions in an effort to curb growing coronavirus infections. Between 5 a.m. and 8 p.m., locals are only allowed to go out for essential activities as the pandemic continues to put the South American country's health service under severe strain. Those outside their homes during curfew hours are subject to questioning and arrest. The new restrictions will remain in place until April the 4th, but can be extended depending on the situation. We'll take a short break now. Join us again after this. Welcome back to From the South. More than 900 people from a village in the west of Java were evacuated after a massive fire broke out early Monday at the Pertamina Balongan refinery in Indonesia. The fire appeared localized at a set of 4 tanks in the middle of the refinery. The local disaster mitigation agency said about 20 people were injured, including refinery workers and several villagers who suffered burns while passing through the area. Nike Widayewari, Chief Executive Officer of state-owned oil and gas corporation Pertamina, said firefighters were still battling the blaze and attempting to cool down to the area to prevent it from spreading. Widayewari also said that the cause of the fire was still being investigated. Salvage teams on Monday set free the colossal container ship that halted global trade through the Suez Canal, bringing an end to a crisis that for nearly a week clogged one of the world's most vital maritime arteries. The Ever Given got stuck sideways in the crucial waterway, creating a massive traffic jam. The obstruction held up $9 billion each day in global trade and strained supply chains already burdened by the coronavirus pandemic. At least 367 vessels carrying everything from crude oil to cattle were forced to wait to pass through the canal, while dozens more took the alternate route around the Cape of Good Hope at Africa's southern tip, adding some 2 weeks to journeys and threatening delivery delays. Thousands of people have been killed in coordinated attacks by Islamist militants in northern Mozambique. The country's defense department said most of the killings took place after soldiers were deployed to the provincial capital Palma, which was struck by Islamist militants on Wednesday. The government is yet to retake control of the city. However, hundreds of other people, both local and foreigners, have been rescued from the town, which is located next to gas projects worth $60 billion.
Last Wednesday, March 24, a group of terrorists sneaked into the main town of Palma and launched actions that resulted in the cowardly murder of dozens of defenseless people and caused material damage to some government infrastructures.
Zimbabwe has started rolling out the second stage of its vaccination campaign, using COVID-19 vaccines donated by China. The initial phase of Zimbabwe's vaccination plan started on February 18th, after the country received its first batch of the Sinopharm vaccines donated by China, giving priority to inoculate healthcare and frontline workers. The second batch was delivered in mid-March, helping the country to kick-start its second phase, which includes teachers, religious leaders, and those with underlying conditions.
Then after that, they assigned their own Chinese doctor who is here, who was working with us. We had experience from Wuhan with working with patients with COVID. Then they even brought other doctors and nurses and therapists to help us deal with the pandemic. They were a real strength, a pillar of strength for us as we were working on the COVID pandemic.
China has been a boon to Africa. Africa has always suffered from being late to come into the Industrial Revolution, so we had no capital.
And Tunisians have gathered in the streets of Sousse to demand the return of household waste illegally exported to the country from Italy. In 2020, Tunisian customs officials seized 282 containers that had been shipped from Italy and declared as carrying plastic scrap from industrial recycling. But the containers were found to hold a mix of household waste, which is barred from import under Tunisian law. Italian authorities had given the Italian firm that sold the waste 90 days to retrieve the cargo from December 9th, but the deadline passed without it doing so. Tunisian conservation groups criticized the inaction on both sides.
There are currently 212 containers in Pier 4 at the port of Sousse. There are also 69 containers containing waste at the importing company's warehouse in Mouradin, which is considered an environmental catastrophe.
Hundreds of Lebanese protesters have rallied in the capital Beirut against a political stalemate that has denied the country a government for months. The protests, organized by Lebanon's Communist Party, blocked traffic in central Beirut. Lebanon is facing an unprecedented economic crisis that has sent the local currency on a descending spiral, where prices soared and poverty increased. But political groups have been locked into a power struggle, failing to agree on forming a government to deal with the crisis. Lebanon's government resigned in August following a massive explosion at Beirut's port that killed 211 people, wounded more than 6,000 and damaged entire neighborhoods in the capital. And now we go live to the UN meeting with head of states and governments.
So as to enhance cooperation, China would like to make the following suggestions. First, to implement G20 initiative.
China supports all parties in pushing forward with relevant initiatives based on the G20 consensus under the multilateral framework. For any debt concerns beyond the G20 consensus, China is willing to work with relevant parties through bilateral channels and encourage friendly negotiations to address the issues. China will continue to provide assistance to the best of its ability to countries facing debt vulnerabilities due to the COVID-19 pandemic. 2. We should take joint actions. Debt relief and suspension should follow the principle of joint actions and fair burden sharing, as well as market rules and current international practices. In the current debt structure of the poorest countries, multilateral and commercial debts account for 2/3 of the total. China is ready to work with all parties to encourage the participation of multilateral and commercial creditors in debt treatment. At the same time, we support issuance of additional special drawing rights and encourage all parties to transfer to low-income countries existing and new special drawing rights as appropriate to help with their economic recovery. 3. Development cooperation must be strengthened with the smooth launch of the new COVID-19 vaccines and effective control of the pandemic. Developing countries have a more urgent need for sustainable source of funds to help achieve independent and sustainable development. To this end, developed countries should earnestly fulfill their commitments of ODA and multilateral development agencies need to provide more resources. The international community should intensify its efforts to implement the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, keep to the principle of common but differentiated responsibilities, and deepen international development cooperation with North-South cooperation as the main channel and South-South cooperation as a complement. Thank you all.
Thank you very much to the Finance Minister of China there, saying that China stands ready to address this issue and also calling for the issuance of new special drawing rights. Now I'd like to introduce Mohammed Al-Jadaan, Minister of Finance and Acting Minister of Economy and Planning for Saudi Arabia.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to express my sincere thanks and appreciation to Prime Minister Trudeau, Prime Minister Holness, and UN Secretary General Guterres for all their efforts since launching the Financing for Development in the Era of COVID-19 and Beyond initiative. Although the vaccination programs are being rolled out, the pandemic for many countries remain a challenge that requires a global collaboration on all levels.
We'll take a short break now. Stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. Slovakia's Prime Minister has announced that he will step down to clear the way for a cabinet reshuffle triggered by a vaccine scandal. Prime Minister Igor Matovic said Finance Minister Eduard Heger from his Ordinary People Party accepted his offer to swap his post. Heger said he will immediately open talks with the coalition partners on a possible new government. The political crisis erupted when a secret deal came to light 3 weeks ago involving Slovakia's agreement to acquire 2 million doses of Russia's Sputnik V vaccine. The purchase was made without the approval of the two of the four parties making up the center-right coalition. Armenia's Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan has announced he's going to resign in April, but will remain in office until the parliamentary elections due on June 20th. The country has been gripped by a political crisis since Pashinyan in November signed a Russian brokered ceasefire agreement with Azerbaijan that ended 6 weeks of fighting for the control of a region in dispute.
Yes, first of all, I will resign in April. Why? I will resign not to resign, but in order for early elections to take place. And in the meantime, I will continue to serve as interim Prime Minister.
Albania has started a mass vaccination campaign after acquiring 192,000 doses of the Chinese coronavirus vaccine Sinovac. Hundreds of people aged 70 and above gather at the main square to get a jab. Vaccination has proceeded slowly in Albania before the arrival of the Sinovac vaccine, with the Balkan nation receiving less than 100,000 Pfizer, AstraZeneca and Sputnik V doses. The country has inoculated 65,000 medical personnel, school teachers and people aged 80 and over so far.
I was waiting for this day and thank God it came. My husband is having the shot at the ambulance center because he is older than 80, while I am having it here at Skanderbeg Square, both in one day, and we are so pleased.
Hundreds of people gathered and danced in Belgium as a symbol of protest against the health restrictions imposed by the government. Protesters gathered in a public park in the city of Leangen in rejection of the tightening restrictions on this occasion, including the closure of all businesses involving no medical physical contact. The majority of the citizens danced and sang without respecting the social distancing nor making use of the facial mask. France, Belgium and Poland took their prevention measures rigorously, while coronavirus cases in Europe increased. The government of Germany collapsed part of the former coal power plant in Langen after signing the end of its coal operations by 2038. The plant was partially destroyed in 3 controlled explosions. Its decommissioning began in June 2020 after a commission appointed by the executive to conclude an agreement to eliminate his highly polluting energy source by 2038 in the context of the fight against climate change. Although it supplied 37% of its electricity, some 40 million euros allowed the financing of the removal of coal, which were transferred to the regions to start with the environmental process. On Monday, in the United States, workers from an Amazon company in Alabama will hand out their ballots to obtain the possibility of unionizing. The count will begin the day after the vote and the approval of the unionization. The employees of the warehouses will become the first members of the Amazon workforce in the country. Nearly 6,000 workers will be able to participate in this vote with a view to increasing their wage income and performing collective work. For his part, Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders, during a press conference, said he did not understand the efforts of the company's chief, the executive officer, to dismiss the workers' efforts.
I say to Mr. Bezos, why, when you have so much money, more money that can be spent in 1,000,000 lifetimes, why are you spending millions trying to defeat an effort on the part of workers here who want nothing more than decent wages, decent benefits, decent working conditions?
A woman has been killed and 6 others injured in a stabbing attack in Canada's North Vancouver. A 20-year-old man went on a stabbing spree in and around a library, killing 1 woman before being apprehended by the police. There is currently no information about the motive. According to local authorities, the suspect has had interaction with police in the past. And several cities around the world turned off their lights Saturday for Earth Hour. For For this year, organizers said they wanted to highlight the link between the destruction of the natural world and the increasing incidence of diseases, such as COVID-19, making the leap from animals to humans. Experts say human activities such as widespread deforestation, destruction of animal habitats, and climate change are sovereign this increase, and warn that more pandemics could occur if nothing is done. And we have come to the end of this news brief. But remember, you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also, if you feel so inclined, please join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and also Telegram. For TeleSUR English, I'm Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.